Start recording. So going through the content at the morning. That's good, bro. Perfect time to start studying, though. Definitely the perfect time to start studying. Right, you won't see much movement. If you do, I don't want to say that, though. I don't want to say there isn't going to be any movement, because from what I remember last year, there was a really good December. In context of there was a pretty solid amount of moves. I mean, we've seen that this December too. So I'm not trying to say there won't be any moves, but just for me, I'm pretty much done for the year. But cool. Let's see. So interesting here, right? What we were talking about in this area on Wednesday, right? Unless I didn't cover it, right? There was a couple of people that were, right, me included, right? We're observing the potential here. We're seeing the potential right, of seeing a potential schematic play out where we have our test here, right? But unfortunately, the only way for this test to create a bias for me is if we take out any levels of structure, right? So we didn't, right? We never gave that optimism here, right? So if we aren't going up, then the only logical direction that we're gonna go is down. So as we're pretty much looking at this, I believe, yeah, this was right around session time. Let's see, where's my replay? Right here. Right around 9 p.m. Right, let's look at our intraday here. Right, if you're wanting to play this complete counter trend, right, easily this would have had to be the break of structure, but we more than likely mitigated something over here because we were unable to break a previous high, right? Meaning that bearish order flow is still intact, right? Not only that, right, but this is now bearish order flow, bearish structure break, pullback, even though it was impulsive, right? This move more than likely had a reason, right? And it was could be mitigate something maybe inside. Let's see. 10-minute. Yeah, cool. Let me delete this stuff. Right, wick to wick, inefficiency 50%, right? Bearish order flow intact, right? On top of bearish structure break, on top of mitigation, completely invalidates any type of potential bullishness coming in, right? Because in order for us to see, right, these swing moves print out a directional bias that we want, we need the smaller time frames to also support, right? Not saying that that's pretty much the make it or break it, but more than likely, right, you're playing a game of probability, and you're playing pretty much again. I mean, you're pretty much playing against all the confirmations that are signaling bearish movement, right? So this is not a spring. This is a lower low, right? And this is honestly printed better out on EURUSD. But anyways, right from there, right, we gave another leg down, lower low, pullback, right? Don't remember what this was. I believe this was the FOMC move. Don't remember what mitigated here, if any, right? But the important part to notice, right, is the initial structure break here and the full structure break here, meaning that the entire bias was bearish the entire time, right? All you have to do is continue trend, right? So when you print that out on EURUSD, it looks so much more cleaner in my opinion. Why? Because remember we pointed out right? Potential, aka double top, right, is usually a very good beginning confirmation for when you're seeing a potential reaccumulation, right? Not only that, but our trend is still up. Our overall structure just broke. Here, right? So it makes no sense to want any type of move that isn't to the upside, right? So taking that into account, I'm sorry. Right, we have our preliminary supply. Right, because it gives an initial reaction, right, that breaks a immediate level of structure, but then it continues higher, right? So this to me, right, is for a reason, and we now have a buying climax. Right, let me actually type that out. Our buying climax, usually in reaccumulations, right, we love to see relative equal highs, double tops, whatever, right? And then your automatic reaction from there, right, even though it causes a structure break, although this causes a structure break, right, let's not forget where our range of structure is, right? Although this created an immediate structure break to the downside, we immediately reacted up, meaning that we are participating inside of this current range, right? And unless we break here, then we have no reason to believe in a bearish bias. Okay? Oops. There. Right? So, even though we had a secondary test occur, which then led to another structure break here, right? Keep in mind our structure is still intact, right? So even though I'm not saying buy here, but I'm also saying it doesn't make any real sense to sell because we're still so bullish on every single time frame above the one we're currently on. So if we're going against pro trend, then you're more than likely going to get burned. And how is that presented here? Corrective structure, fake out, take off, right? A liquidity grab here, right? So as soon as this happens, this move happens, that is now optimism right here, and that is showing, right, that it was showing its hand, right? We always come back to that specific statement, and this is now to me a liquidity grab. Why? Because we maintain the overall structure range, and we're now showing optimism, right, by creating a bullish structure break, right? Meaning this liquidity grab was more than likely causing just liquidity to be cleared, right? And I point out this wick because this wick led to this structure break, and that, as you can see, was broken too, right? So we have our liquidity grab, maintain structure, and now created optimism through a bullish structure break, right? We see here created this final high here, which then led to this higher here, right? So I personally do not want to see this or this break because we now invalidate the entire bias. So post optimism, right, we now have our lower high, a higher low, a new higher high, higher low, unwillingness, right? And then essentially a liquidity grab here, which then led to a structure break, but we've now taken out our buying climax, resulting in a true sign of strength, right? Which is why from a theory standpoint, when you see a sign of strength, even though FOMC pushes us down, right, from a perspective of structure and from a perspective of logic, from a Wyckoff perspective, right, structure here never broke, for one, and two, any pullback here is only your last point of supply, right? Because now, after our last point of supply is rejected, reacted, and followed through, we now create bullish movement, right? Which is what we talked about, that we wanted to see this pop off on Wednesday, right? So walking through that is a Wyckoff perspective with solely focused on structure and continuing pro trend, right? So from a volume perspective, right, the only reason why I was very iffy right here is because we never showed any true buying climax. I wanted to see a very high bar of bullish volume, right? So just because of that, I'm unsure, and I now have a reason to step away and let it show its hand so I can then try to find a continuation play, right? So, right, from a Wyckoff perspective now, although we're creating bearish structure, we then show optimism and we then show supply present, right? Supply present, bullish structure break, pro trend bullish. You now have every excuse to look for buying positions, right? So whether it's here, whether it's here, right? Even if it's here, right? Even though you broke even, you then see it show its hand again and see more supply shown. Although it's not as strong, our bullish trend is still intact, right? So even though there's technically diminishment, we still have no reason to believe any type of selling bias. Why? Because during trading hours, right, which is not here, right, which means that we would have probably looked at the markets here and we would have looked at the markets here, right? We now see that the schematic is intact, that the structure is intact, that the order flow is intact, right? So now, because so much supply has been used to move this much price, we see this diminishment, right? So what is this saying? Potentially a type of pullback, right? But I would not like to see that LPS break, because that is your sign of, this is your point of invalidation of not only the schematic, the bias, and honestly, I would just step away at that point. So yeah, does that make sense? Does that make sense, guys? With that structure break, yes, bro. That's what I'm saying. That's what I mean by showing its hand, right? Because I don't remember if I pointed it out here, right? But let's delete this. You guys know this, right? Showing its hand, bullish structure break, right? This is showing its hand. This is very similar to what we reviewed months ago, where they're showing its hand, bullish structure break, lower high, continuation. And it's the same concept here, I believe. Right? Consistent lower highs, show its hand, pull back, show its hand, pull back, show its hand, liquidity grab. That wouldn't have, essentially, you would have got no opportunity there. Show its hand, you see this, created that final high, show its hand, now shown full SOS, here, opportunities stacking on themselves. Do you step away? Yeah, I step away. But that's just my personal issue, because I'm not as dynamic as I can be. And why? Because I trust in my bias overall, right? Hence why I haven't tried to sell EURUSD in a very long time. And if I have, it's only been 2 to 3 times this entire year. Right, so yes, it's good to be open about biases, but at the end of the day, I'm bullish, you know? And for the past... Let me see. And for the past April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, for the past 9 months, we've been correct. Right? So... because of the unwillingness, you have a target. Oops. You have target. Question, can you unmute your mic? Yeah, you can.
Okay, cool. I just thought I'd double check before I did it.
Yeah,
just a quick question. So I get your point on from when you were looking at it on the 1 hour and you know, that point of validation you consider on the 1 hour. My question is the leg on the daily. So I've measured my leg on the daily from that previous swing low to swing high, and my question is let's say for example, so shall I answer on the screen just to
what time frame?
On a daily, so
It's a 12-hour.
yeah, basically from that last low on the daily, that last swing point before that impulse up, after that minor retracement.
You can go ahead.
Where's the annotation? Oh, I can't find the annotation.
It should be.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, I got it. So yeah, basically, when I was looking at it from daily time, this is obviously your low from the daily, and then this is your impulsive leg up to here. So obviously you've got the 1 hour, your 1 hour point of validation, which is somewhere here. I can't remember exactly, but would you not consider anywhere, as long as we don't break the daily low, that this would still be bullish, because ultimately we're still within that daily leg?
Okay, so let me explain that then. So the only reason why this point of invalidation here is significant to me is because if we break this, right, you can start looking for bearish opportunities, but because I know I'm not pro trend, I'm not really trying to participate in that, just because of the trader who I am, right? I'm looking for my 400, 500 pip moves, right? Even though these are still 100, 200 pips, right? Extremely worth it. You can trade it, but you still have to keep in the back of your mind where your overall trend is, right? So if that point of invalidation is then taken out, right? Who's to say it's not just coming back to mitigate here, right? So the point of invalidation for the continuation bias, right? I don't want to start selling because my overall trend is bullish, right? So even if you do sell, I'm still looking for every hedge opportunity, because all this can be is one daily pullback, right? But if that point of invalidation is taken out, then I'm pretty much sitting on my hands until the pair show its hand.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think that's the same way I'd look at it. Like, I would look at it bullish on the daily until we break that low, but there's obviously opportunities because the trend is invalidated on the 1 hour. Once you break this, there's opportunity to hedge, basically, is what you're saying.
And that's because you really don't know how far a pair is going to retrace.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? Because, for example, right, look at the retracements. Right, this never even gave equilibrium. Oh, this one gave equilibrium here, but this was still technically bearish at the time, right? But here, pullback, never even came back to equilibrium based on these lows. Right here, never came back to equilibrium based off low and high. Right, so even though
makes sense.
Invalidation, that initial point of invalidation is for the continuation, right? If that breaks, I'm now sitting on my hands until it shows its hand, right? For example, here, I'm not selling, I'm waiting to show its hand, right? So technically, these are points of invalidation, right? Does that make sense? And this is what you're saying, that if these break, right, we have now a pullback, unwillingness, we continue lower, right? So the reason why I'm not trying to sell is because at any moment, the overall bias can still come into play and show its hand, and then these are where you want to buy.
Yeah, I think that's the way I was seeing it. Thanks, Ro.
Hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, does anybody have any questions on this overall scenario? We saw this play out, right, since here. Pretty interesting to see it play out in person, though. I think that's what matters. Last one. This one didn't do much while we were here. Came back, liquidity grab here, right? Although we gave a reaction, right? There's still a lot of room in the downside, unless we break our overall structure point. Because for all we know, they could come back, fill inefficiency, and continue lower. Why? Because we're ranging, can easily give a spike up and come lower. The reason why I say that is because we've seen it do it here, and we've seen it do it here. So who's to say we don't scribble here? Liquidity, go away. I'm not saying that's a tendency, but it could very well happen again because it's already happened twice in a span of a week and a half. But yeah, for the most part, right, because we broke this low here, right, continuation of structure. Right, just that's all that makes sense to me here. Especially because we have about 21 days until the monthly closure. And if we continue lower, look at how that looks. See? Look at how that looks, supporting our bias, giving us targets for all of 2021. Right? But remember what we said, we want to see these lows be taken to give us that full incentive that this is bearish. Right? I personally don't believe this will be bullish anytime soon. Doesn't really make sense. Right? Especially if Brexit finally concludes. Are you still holding sells? I'm holding like a little bit from the high. But for the most part, I'm closing most of my positions by the end of the year. I don't really see a point in holding them. Except maybe the high one for obvious reasons. But yeah, I mean, other than that, right? GU still bullish, still showing a 10. This one also still has a lot of room, right? Especially because of the entire schematic playing out, right? Have so many targets. This is the one I'm pretty much most excited about in a macro perspective. Right, just has so much room. Because we're just now, right, just see it like this. We're just now showing a hand based off of this structure point. Right, now any pullback is a very safe buy to then hopefully take out something here in the long run. Right, because we see this wick take out three previous wicks, we could see an SC in here react to cause a pullback and then give you another opportunity to take out highs. Right, not saying to hold a position, but I'm just saying you have a bias for the rest of the year, at least. But yeah, I mean, other than that, do you guys have any questions?
Yo, Fredo. I was backtesting EURUSD from a while back, and you know how like all of 2019 it was super bearish.
Where?
What was your
what pair? I'm sorry.
say again?
What pair? I'm sorry. What pair?
EURUSD. Sorry, EURUSD. What was your invalidation point to start like trading it? Because obviously we had that accumulation and we had the reaccumulation. But did you have an invalidation point to be like, all right, I'm done with selling and now I'm gonna just buy?
Do we have anybody in here from the old Visionaries group? Do we have anybody in here from the old Visionaries group? We do, right? Let's see. No, not really, do we? Garen, were you paying attention back in the day when I said 1.06 was a target, or 1.07, 1.08-ish?
Say that again?
Do you remember?
Can you repeat that?
Do you remember when we were aiming for 1.07, 1.08?
I know that you were aiming somewhere down there, but I can't give a specific number.
So the entire time, about over a year ago, the entire time, right, we were looking at this area. We were looking at the monthly. I mean, well, now I should have been looking at that wick now, But back then I didn't look at anything like that, right? But we were looking at what month was it? 2 months? Was it the 3 month? But there is a POI that we were looking at, which is 1.08, right? So there was like the open, and there was a 50%. I'm pretty sure it was 3 month. Let me add that really quick. I believe it was a 3 month. No, I don't remember what. Was it 3 days? Because there was a POI we were looking at, right? And there was an open and there was a 50%. The 50% was this. The open reacted off of 108. Right? So, back in the day, I was selling this to hell. Why? Because we understood structure to the downside, and even if we showed these bullish moves, we knew, right, that our overall structure was still bearish, right? So when we reacted here and we gave an accumulation, which we reviewed in the course, I believe, this launched EURUSD, propelled it to take out a ton of highs, right? But in order for me to consider this still bullish, I would have wanted these lows to maintain themselves and to continue higher. But since they broke, right, bearish order flow is now in play. And that led to POI number 2, right, which I then took a buy here. And then I took a buy here off of a candle that was here, right? But the full-on bearish bias was invalidated after the reaction here, right? And then the follow-through here, right? Whereas this break of structure then solidified that bias, right? So now if you want to look at it from the other perspective, the only way I'm going to consider this bearish, right, is initially we need to break this, give a sign of unwillingness, give another structure break, give a continuation, and now I consider it bearish, because now this is showing to me bearish structure, bearish order flow, and we're now aiming for these lows. But honestly, it'd still be high risk because the overall perspective, the overall low here is still intact, so this can easily reverse here. So it's going to take a lot for me to change that bias, bro, especially from the perspective of dollar has a ton of room, right? Even though we reacted from that 3-day candle that we were looking at, this is still extremely bearish, and I would prefer to not see a reaction until we take out lows and we take out highs, right? Because that shows that liquidity has been cleared and we can now balance out in the opposite direction. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's just like when I was backtesting 2018, 2019 on EURUSD, like I found it really easy to read structure. But like
Yeah,
as
it
soon as
was.
the COVID thing happened, like I was just like, even though I knew what happened, I was like I was finding it very confusing, like why
Yeah,
sometimes I had
I mean, do you remember that I said I believe the COVID stage is, I don't know if I said it on a Zoom or said it on a post, but I believe the COVID stage is a transitional period. And that I believe that after COVID, we're going to see very good trending markets again.
Yeah.
So obviously that's not, take that with a grain of salt, right? But that's just my 2 cents.
But the rules still implied during the COVID.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
the
of
rules.
course. Yeah, they still worked.
Yeah.
It's just the volatility obviously came because of all the COVID issues and obviously how much money was being printed at the time and a lot of other factors.
Yeah.
But yeah. Cool. Does anybody have any more questions? Can you please take go one back to the example? There you can start trade. Well, bro, I only trade 2 to 3 pairs, so I know exactly where my pairs are going. I know exactly what my bias has been for the past 2-3 months. Amit, you just joined, correct? Yes. So what does the process say? What is step number 1? Yeah, but what do you mean learn? What do you mean? What does the process say? Because I'm explaining myself to you. What does the process exactly say? I'll sit here. I got time. No, what does the process say, bro? What does the process in the Discord say? And you have to trust me here. All right, I'm gonna put these questions on the Zoom so people can refer to it later. All right, because I'm going somewhere with this. What does the process say? That's my question. Simple answer. The answer is pretty much given to you. I just want you to read it and understand it. And I'll sit here for as long as we have to wait. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just tell me and I'll show you. And this doesn't specifically apply to you. This applies to every single member in RC Visionaries. Because based on your question, I know that you're new. I'm not being hard on you, bro. I'm asking you a simple question. What does the process say? What is the step 1 of the process? I'm not being hard on you. I'm just asking a question. No, you copied and pasted it. What does it say? What is your interpretation of what it says? What is your interpretation, bro? Like I said, I'm not being hard on you. I just want to know your interpretation of what you just copied and pasted was. Watch content, interpret it. Do you know why I have it that way? I'll ask again. Do you know why it's set up like that? No, it's not to get a better understanding of market structure. You're thinking too superficially, bro. It's to understand everything, to understand the system, to understand the path that you're going to take. I have the first 3 to 4 weeks set for you to study because I don't want the basic questions that can be answered in the content that you haven't finished yet. Why? Because like I said, I'm not here to hold your hand, right? I'm here as your support system and here to set your foundation, right? Beyond that, right, the reason why I have people try to do this alone for the first 3 to 4 weeks is because you're here to be independent, not dependent. If you become dependent on me, you become dependent on these biases, you're never going to get anywhere. Trust me. People have tried it. They're not going to get anywhere. And it's until they get through that hard-headed stage that they can then learn how to grow, right? Like I said, I'm not getting on your ass, right? But you have to stick to the process before you start asking me questions, because I know the question that you asked me can be answered with time, right? And if I give you the answer that you want, it won't make sense and you won't be able to apply it. And if you aren't able to apply it, then you're wasting your time. You know what I'm saying? Which is why I have it to where everybody needs to be independent to some extent, because at the end of the day, right, even though we're in this together, trading is an independent journey. Why? Because I don't execute your trades for you. You don't execute your trades for me. You don't journal your trades for me, or I don't journal your trades for you. Right? I do it for me, you do it for you. Right? Which is selfish to an extent, right? But it's an independent journey, right? So please, you have to not only trust in me, not even trust in the process. You have to trust in yourself that you're able to do it. If you don't believe in yourself to begin with, and you want to become dependent, then you're not gonna get anywhere, bro. Right? And I believe that's a big reason to why majority of groups, right, end up with so much hate, end up with so much negativity, right? Because we're thinking overall picture, right? But we're also trying to break down the steps of the overall big picture, right? These Zooms are discussion based, not teaching based, if you notice, right? I don't sit here and teach you what an SC is. I don't sit here and teach you what an efficiency is. Those are the prerequisites that you go through your first 2 to 3 months, right? So that then you're able to interpret the Zooms, and now is when you can start developing your models, developing your trading plan, testing your trading plan, finishing your journals, reflecting on your journals, right? That accumulation is what's going to see or create progression for you. And depending on how much progression, based off of how you were initially, pretty much determines how long it'll take you to see real success, right? So it's so subjective to the individual, but I think I have it set up to where it's broad enough to apply to almost anybody that joins. Right, so does that make sense? Do you understand what I want you to do? Awesome. Now, if you have questions on the process, you can obviously message me and we can, sort that out in the DMs. But from there, it's all on you. Right, so that goes for everybody too. Like, does that make sense? Did I make sense there? Cool. I think that's a perfect place to leave everything at.
Yo, Fredo, sorry, I got one last quick question. Going back to the question I asked you once before about liquidity grabs and stuff, does it affect bias? And then you said it doesn't. It's not enough of information to change your bias or whatever, which I completely agree with. But would liquidity grabs come into narrative, not necessarily bias?
Yes, because there's two different scenarios. Let me show you two different scenarios. One where it was pro trend, one where it was counter trend. EURUSD. Pretty much inverse scenarios. Right, so keep in mind, right, our bias is bullish, correct?
Yeah.
So what do you see here?
Liquidity grab.
A liquidity grab, which then supports the overall bias, right? And it comes back to even mitigate probably an extreme here. So as you can see, so your question was, can you repeat your question one more time so I make sure I know it?
Yeah, so liquidity grab doesn't change bias because it's not enough information, but it does include into narrative.
So this liquidity grab is meant to clear, right, a previous low that did not create a high, right? Which means that this liquidity grab fits the overall narrative and not a structure break. Why? Because this led to a structure break, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in the other perspective, right? Remember, we're seeing here. Right, we see pretty much we take liquidity and an immediate strong reaction, right? The immediate strong reaction does not break structure, meaning the narrative is still to the downside, right? So it really doesn't change your bias, right? So you see how this is not enough for me to conclude a change of trend.
Yeah. So it's a good narrative when following trend, but it's not enough information to reverse. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So that's why I always say continuations over reversals. That's just like engrave that shit on your head. That's all I pretty much aim to do.
Yeah.
Yep. So
I just noticed that Yeah, I just noticed that before like the move happens, it's very common to see like a liquidity grab before in the same direction. Like
So psychologically, would you say it's a barrier to want you to go against your bias?
kind of
Psychologically?
I say at first, yeah, but not as much anymore.
Exactly. And why is that?
Because I'm understanding
Experience.
like yeah, experience.
There
Yeah,
you go. So because you notice it one time, you're better prepared the next time.
yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
Because before I'd see those liquidity grabs as like invalidation points being taken, so therefore, but I wasn't reading the full legs, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much where I originated the initial structure rule, where, right, unless a high is broken, you're not in a bullish trend, right? That's where that
Yeah.
originated from, because I don't care what happens here for the most part, right? These are your factors that determine trend.
Yeah. Because before I would have been seeing that as like, oh, liquidity has been taken, quick react, momentum is going up, therefore, by momentum coming down, good opportunity to buy. But now I'm like, nah, that didn't take up enough.
And then now you're looking for every single excuse to want to buy. Like you'll be like, oh, structure break, oh, structure break.
Yeah.
But in reality, your entire move is still down.
Like honestly, now I'm starting to see liquidity grabs as like excuses to sell. You know what I mean? Like my mindset's kind of switched.
100%. Yeah, I'm glad you're seeing that so soon.
Yeah, I mean these past like 10 days, 2 weeks have been like almost life changing when it comes to trading. Like something's like starting to click. You know what I mean?
Yep. And why is that? Because it makes sense.
Yeah.
And all you're doing is taking a logical approach.
Yeah.
Instead of a biased approach where you just see what you want to see.
Yeah, like before I was kind of like trying to predict too much information. I'm like, just because I see a thing happen doesn't mean that what I want to see is going to happen, which is this big move upwards. You know what I mean? You still have to take into consideration, you know, price has got a lot of things to do before it does that.
And then after it happens, you're like, oh, okay, this makes sense. This is why, blah, blah, blah. This happened, blah, blah, blah. This happened. Right? So that originated because now you understand why it made sense for this to continue lower. So now you're prepared to prepare the next scenario.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, improvement, refinement, consistency, efficiency. But yeah, 42 minutes in. All right, guys, I have to go though. I'm supposed to go eat brunch with Sergio, but I really want to go sit in the sauna for like 20 minutes before I go, and I still got to shower. So I will see you guys Wednesday. Let me open the chat one more time. Have a good Saturday, guys. I won't be able to upload to Zoom right now because I want to head out within the next 8 minutes. But yeah, 40-minute Zoom, not bad. I'll catch you guys Wednesday. Actually, we'll talk more Wednesday.